Hey, what's going on guys? My name's Mida with Ignition Off-Road, and today we're finally installing the Monster lift kit into my SG Forester. So as you guys have probably seen from a video I posted a month ago, I purchased a SubieLiftOz Monster lift kit for my SG Forester, and today I'm finally going to install it. So the car itself, I have pulled the old lift kit out. I was previously running on a 2.5 inch front, 3 inch rear lift kit. That's now out, back to stock suspension. So today I'm going to start from scratch. I'm going to put in the Monster lift kit, which is a 4 inch front, 4.5 rear with a 2 inch subframe drop. So that's going to keep the CV angles at a nice alignment. Anyway, first thing we're going to do, jack up the car, give the underneath of it a good wash, and then let's get started in installing the lift kit. Okay, so the new lift kit is now in. If this video was not enough information for you, don't stress out. This was simply a time-lapse video for your entertainment, and there's going to be a proper step-by-step tutorial on how to fit a SubieLiftOz Monster lift kit to your Subaru. A link for that will be up here somewhere on the screen when the video is ready. So now that the lift is in the car, I just want to talk to you guys about some of the things that I enjoy about the lift, some things that I've noticed, some negatives, and just give you a little bit of insight into what my thoughts are. Okay, so the first thing obviously about the new lift, let's talk about the clearances. Now obviously I've got a lot more fender clearance here than I did before, and this is fantastic. I now have no rubbing issues whatsoever with these tyres. Beforehand, at full lock, back corner of these tyres used to slightly rub on that firewall, but now with that extra 2 inches of lift, no rub whatsoever, which is absolutely fantastic. Now, while we are on the topic of new clearances, I'm just going to run through what the new specs are of this car in terms of my diff clearance heights and my approach and departure angles. So I've got them written down here. So the front clearance that I've got from the ground to my sump guard, I've got 270 millimeters of clearance. Now for those US guys, I'll write it on the screen somewhere in inches so you guys know what it is. All right, so for the rear diff, 300 millimeters of clearance. And then for the front approach angle, I've got an approach angle of 33.7 degrees, and the rear departure angle, I've got an angle of 26 degrees. So for a little Subaru, that's not too bad at all. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about, the 2-inch driveline drop spacers. So you can see them here, aluminium spacers, very, very visible. Now, I'm personally actually not that much of a fan of this. You can see here this whole front subframe is dropped down quite a bit actually, and it sort of inhibits in the ground clearance a little bit. So I'm not actually much of a fan of that. Now, the other thing is that body spacers, they're not that legal where I am, unless I get them engineered. So I think to try and avoid the attention from the cops, first thing I'm going to do is probably paint these spaces black so they don't stand out as much. And I think the other thing I can do is just give the subframe a little bit of a chop about here, and then move this front subframe assembly back into the original position, and then weld an extension back between the original subframe and the now lowered subframe. That way it's still going to be structural, obviously probably not the most legal thing to do, but it should look a lot neater, and I'll have that little bit more clearance at the front there, which will be fantastic. As well as these body spacers, because that front subframe is now that 2 inches lower, the other thing I have had to do is with the sump guard. Now the sump guard wouldn't fit back on without any drama, so what I've had to do is actually put 2-inch spacers at the front. Again, that is a bit of an inhibiting factor with the ground clearance, so that's something I'm looking at changing. Now, as you can see, this exhaust is hanging quite low on the rear end, and that is because we've actually dropped the driveline down those 2 inches, and the body is now up higher with that 4-inch strut top lift. So this exhaust is actually sitting 2 inches lower away from the body than it originally was. So one thing you have to do when you do get your 4-inch Monster lift kit or any Subaru lift kit with subframe spacers is your exhaust is no longer going to fit properly. The main thing you're going to have to do is modify the exhaust hangers just to make it work. But realistically, what you want to do is try and get this exhaust to an exhaust shop, or if you can do it yourself, do it yourself. You really want to get this exhaust tucked back up and get that extra clearance again. So that's something that I still have to do. Okay, so let's talk under the bonnet. So engine, obviously with the 2-inch subframe drop, my whole driveline is now 2 inches lower. And I don't know how well the camera's going to pick this up, but my engine is in fact 2 inches lower than it previously was. What does that mean? Well, there's going to be a few extensions that need to happen. In my case, only being a 2-inch subframe drop, it wasn't terrible. What I mainly had to look at was the fuel line. So I've extended the fuel line and radiator hoses. If you have a look at the front here, I've got a spacer in the front of the radiator hose just to extend it out a little bit, make sure those hoses are feeling nice and comfortable and not under too much stress. Otherwise, engine is driving fine. I've had no issues with the driveline drop down that little bit. One thing I do want to point out with doing the subframe drop and having your engine a little bit lower is spark plugs. Now we all know Subaru spark plugs are a pain in the ass as they are, but where they are now, drop down those 2 inches, those spark plug covers are actually right in line with where the base of that body is. So I don't even know how I'm going to access spark plugs in the future. It's going to be quite interesting. Okay, so that's a quick sum up of the new Monster lift kit in my car. So this did take me about 4 days to do, which included filming and installing the kit. Unfortunately, some of those days I did get interrupted by rain, and as I was doing it on my driveway, I did have to break some of those days short, hence why it took a little bit longer. But it's all in now, and I'm actually really excited to take this out on the tracks. So if you're doing the Monster lift kit install yourself, you can expect to do it in about 2 to 3 days, depending on your mechanical knowledge and if you've got someone to assist you installing the lift. Overall, it was pretty simple to install. Matt's instructions were really easy to follow and everything made sense, and you don't really need that many tools. As long as you've got a good jack, a few jack stands and your basic tools, your spanners and that sort of thing, then it's actually pretty simple to install. Now, as I mentioned, there are still a few things I need to do. I still need to get the wheel alignment. I still need to get the exhaust to an exhaust shop. I have modified the hangers myself so that I can drive this around without any issues. But in future, I do want to get that exhaust tucked up higher into the body to give myself that little bit more ground clearance. Other than that, I'm pretty stoked with the look. Obviously, that front subframe, I do want to try and modify that just that little bit more, just to make it a little bit more subtle and make it look just that little bit nicer, because I'm not a fan of that big square hanging out underneath the front of the car. But other than that, I'm really happy with this kit. I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you want to help me and support what I do, you can go check out my FanBeach account, a link in the description below, and I'll catch you all next time. See ya.